Hi, I'm Lauretta and this is my sister, Sharon. We are founders of the plant-based retreat, the Detox Barn, and we're also a comedy double act. I know, funny vegans. Shoot me now.
9 years ago, I was diagnosed with a chronic autoimmune disease and got myself better using a plant-based diet. Since then, I've just fallen in love with living well.
I retrained as a natural vegan chef, and each week we'll be interviewing experts in the wellness industry, as well as sharing the highs and lows of trying to live well as single mums living together with our 2 kids. How well have we lived this week? I had an experience yesterday that I want to share that's made me angry, upset, and slightly obsessed.
Want to explain, Loretta?
Yeah, so my dad called me and said that he'd had a letter from the FSCS, which is the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, and would I help him? Looked at the letter, it was a 4-page letter, there was like official documentation, and it was all about the fact that he had invested in a wine company about 15 years ago. They'd finally, got this company, they were in liquidation, and
because the wine company was a scam that he originally invested in.
And he was now due compensation, but he had to fill in all these forms, blah blah blah. So I thought, I don't know how to fill in these forms, they look really complicated. So I thought I'll just phone them and find out what I need to do. I had my dad with me and I said, hi, I'm calling on behalf of Martin Gavin. He invested in this company. Anyway, this chap on the phone put me through to somebody and took I'd say about 45 minutes talking through the whole case, giving me advice for protection. When you do get your compensation, you do need to guarantee us that you won't be investing in high risk investments. We have to give that safeguarding advice to all our clients.
So potentially our dad was going to get 27 grand back.
£27,000 they said he was due in compensation, but he needed a trading reference number. And I asked my dad, he said no, because I haven't got that original documentation. And they said, okay, well, we'll have to work through that. They said, look on page 3, listed is the company that's associated with the payout. He said, other companies may approach you. Please be aware that these are scam companies. The only company allowed to issue the payment is a company called Asset Management. Also, really, really nice. Like, you're such a lovely daughter looking after your father with this. Tell him not to invest in any more wine. And I'm like joking back going, no, don't worry. I said, it's going on a cruise. So then he said, right, you haven't got a trading reference number. You do need to get a temporary trading number in order for the funds to be submitted into your bank account. He said, this is temporary. And once the funds have been released into your bank account, you will be reimbursed for this amount. I said, okay, fine. I said, how much is it? He says, 2.5 grand. I was like, 2.5 grand? And my dad was giving me his credit card, going, go on, give it, pay it, 27 grand, And I'm like, do you know what? I said, I'm just going to hold off, because all of a sudden I was like, that's a lot of money to just pay over the phone. I said, I'm going to call you back tomorrow. Anyway, did a quick Google.
Are you the FSCS, the Financial Services Compensation Scheme?
That's correct.
Right. It's a bit confusing because I actually Googled you guys and you've kind of got different telephone numbers and stuff, haven't you? What's going on?
Sorry?
You've got a different telephone number when I actually Google the FSCS.
Yes, of course. The number that you've got on the letter is the direct line to the administration department in London. The general number is what's found on the line.
Right. How do you sleep at night?
So I then looked up FSCS scams. And I looked on their website, anything that's signed by Daniel Pritchard. I was asked for Daniel Pritchard.
And are you under Daniel Pritchard?
Yes, correct.
Okay, because I've just Googled that and it said any letters from Daniel Pritchard is an actual scam. Is that what you're doing, trying to scam people?
No, that's not right. Are you talking about a blog page?
No, I'm talking about I've actually contacted the real FSCS. And they've informed me that anyone that is operating or get letters from Daniel Pritchard is actually scamming people. Is that what you do for a living? Scam people?
No, that's not correct.
I don't know how you sleep at night. You're still lying, aren't you?
And I felt, honestly, I'd been
violated.
I felt violated. I felt really upset. Thank God I didn't do it, because I really fell for it and I was a real idiot and I was joking with them and I was like, I really bought it. I absolutely 100% bought it.
So we've reported it to like the fraud line or whatever, and they sort of said, look, don't contact them. We are now going to be dealing with it. But I couldn't help myself. I just thought, you bastards. Like, I know you're scamming. How do you sleep at night? That's what I want to know. There's old people that you are writing to and scamming, aren't you? What do you have to say for yourself?
Hello?
I know.
Yeah.
Daniel Pritchard is a scam.
Excuse me. What I'm going to need to do is terminate the call. I think you may actually... Are you lost a little bit?
No, I'm not lost, and this is all being recorded.
So what I'm going to do is, because I'm going to have to...
Daniel Pritchard is a scammer, and you are working under that name, aren't you?
Yeah, so excuse me.
How do you sleep at night?
You've come through to the switchboard.
No, there's a switchboard. You're just talking bullshit. There is no switchboard. It's you and your mate scamming people. How do you sleep at night? How do you sleep at night?
Stop shouting.
How do you sleep at night?
Ask who Daniel Pritchard
Who
is.
is Daniel Pritchard?
It's 17 past 10. I'm sure you have a job.
Who is Daniel Pritchard? I do have a job. My job is to unravel you.
Press 1 for once, they didn't know who it was.
We'll shut ourselves really, because we're after like going, it's probably like major criminals, like they might hunt us down. We're sharing this on our podcast now.
Yeah, but I want to get them. I hope, if anyone is a detective out there or whatever,
Yeah, anyone that's listening that's high up in the FBI, whatever, can you find Daniel Pritchard? I wanted to sort of say, and this is genuine, like, if you put as much creativity and dedication into creating something legit as you have with scamming people, you'd be really successful. It's actually really entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
The lengths they've gone to, like, why can't you tune that energy into something good? And that's what I really wanted to say. And like, there's part of me that wanted them to have like a light bulb moment of like, why am I?
Movies.
No, I know, but like, why am I?
You're gonna like life coach them.
Yes, I'm gonna life coach the scammers.
Yeah,
into using their energy for good.
This week's podcast, we are joined by Anna Donahay. It's a really interesting podcast, all about changing your mindset towards alcohol. Something that Sharon and I are deeply... Get in the video. What are you doing? You're cutting yourself out.
Well, you're talking.
Yeah, we can both be in it. We're deeply passionate about.
It's a really interesting conversation, and I think especially for those people that are sort of starting to challenge their drinking habits, starting to think, I'm craving that wine 6 o'clock every night now,
or I'm just drinking more than I want to.
Yeah, that kind of, that slow sort of feeling in your gut, like I don't want to drink as much as I am, but I keep doing the same thing over and over again. It goes into the insight, into the behaviours and why we behave like that. And ultimately, Anna is really brave, and she really shares intimately her own story, which I think is really inspiring and also really, really relatable.
This episode is sponsored by us, Gavin Sisters, and our very first product, Funki Coffee. It's triple certified.
Paid a fortune to sponsor this.
Yeah, we're paying ourselves.
Yeah.
It's triple certified organic Arabica coffee, and it's boosted with potent adaptogens. The health benefits are many, but don't just take our word for it.
Yeah, instead of us banging on about it, we decided to test our coffee out with our guests at the Detox Barn and take a listen to what they have to say.
They're not getting paid.
No one's getting paid here. Let's be honest.
So we've just served Funky Coffee at the Detox Barn. What did everybody think?
Coffee is delicious. Amazing. And it's not bitter, and it tastes like real coffee.
I was very sceptical, but absolutely it was stunning.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. And did you find, because you had it yesterday, did you find you had a crash afterwards, or did you feel like you had sustained energy?
Sustained, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
They want to buy shares in the company. Okay, thanks everybody. For our listeners, you can get 10% off. Go to gavinsisters.co.uk and use the code podcast at checkout.
So, welcome to the podcast, Anna Donahay.
Yeah.
We're really excited to have you. We've been on your podcast, The Big Drink Rethink. Personally, we're always really excited when we find anyone else out there that is as passionate about non-drinking as we are, and has discovered essentially that basically giving up drink is probably one of the best things you can possibly do with your life. And you've got a whole podcast about that. So we really wanted to get you on our sofa and to really speak to you about all about your podcast, all about your life, and why you decided to launch your podcast. But to tell the viewers a little bit about you, you used to work in advertising, was very, very successful, had a really big career, but you are now an alcohol coach. Is that right? Are you an alcohol coach?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
just
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I am. So you're absolutely right. I worked for years and years and years in advertising. Had a very long career in that industry, and I suppose it spanned about 22 years by the time I called time on that.
Yeah.
Before that, I worked in manufacturing. So I'm 54. So I've had about 10, 15 years on the manufacturing side of things, and then about 20 years on the advertising, roughly
Yeah.
speaking. Both of which were fairly boozy
Yeah.
industries. Different stages in my life, obviously, but nonetheless sort of relatively booze-soaked cultures.
Yeah.
And I contributed rather heavily
Yeah.
to the booze-soaked culture.
Because I know, like agencies, like I know you said you work for Saatchi.
Yeah.
I know when I've been in those type of agencies, sometimes when I was acting and filming adverts, and sometimes you'd go there for a costume fitting or whatever. I mean, there's literally like bars and stuff. I was like, just thought it was like the coolest place ever. But
yeah.
the culture, I mean, there's like pubs at work basically.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably changed now. But when I was there, was it like that?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. And I mean, I haven't walked into an advertising agency for a while, so I don't know. But
Yeah.
we used to, certainly in each of the agencies I worked in, I thought it was like top banana, because effectively you would walk in and the first thing in the atrium would be, sort of an achingly cool reception.
Yeah.
And then behind that, towards the back of the atrium, there would be a bar for sure.
Yeah.
And, it was kind of academic in a way because we were in Soho.
Yeah.
So there was like a bar on every corner,
Yeah.
or a pub on the corner of every square. And a lot of what we got up to in the industry evolved around those kind of spaces. We would take clients out
Yeah.
for lunches or take clients to awards, and we'd say, come into the agency first and we'll have a few kind of,
Yeah.
preload a few drinks.
Yeah.
So it was very boozy.
Yeah.
And I think, there's lots of reasons for that. I think alcohol back in the day certainly got closely associated with creativity.
Did it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And it does with stand-ups and writers as well, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's the case because, we used to say, we're having a brainstorm, bring the beers,
Oh, really?
or
Yeah.
get the beers out. And there is a certain amount of truth be told that when you are having a brainstorm, if you want to like lower your inhibitions
Yeah.
and take on this mantra that no idea is a crap idea, and
Yeah.
you're just happy to spurt stuff out, then having a few drinks inside you obviously helps. And
Yeah.
it can help with the lateral thinking to a point where you just start to kind of talk crap basically, and
Yeah.
the quality of the idea goes downhill. But nonetheless, the creative business would have had sort of quite strong associations with booze. I did used to work in manufacturing before that, and the only reason I focus on that is because I used to be the client. So I used to go into advertising agencies as the car account client, and that's why I wanted to work in one. I was like, this is the best part of my week.
Yeah.
I get to come down to London, I get to hang out with the agency, I get to drink
Yeah.
during the day, then they're going to take me out for lunch,
Yeah.
and then we're going to kill a few hours in the pub, and then we're going to go to an awards dinner or
That
some
sounds
such.
brilliant. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's also quite, it's quite a lot of young people work in advertising, so it feels like a cool culture
Yeah.
to go into. It feels like a sort of an extension of university.
Yeah.
It's boozy.
Yeah.
I drank a lot in my advertising days, but the other thing is, I moved down to London to join the agency world, and I was a single girl living on my own in a flat, which was very nice. I loved my flat, don't get me wrong, but it was just me. So I did that classic thing, which lots of people do, I think, in the city, is you do all your socialising after work,
Yeah.
and then you go home to literally fall into bed and sleep. And that was 5 days a week.
Yeah. So you do that every night?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And you know what? By the time you've had a few after work, picking a bottle up from the Tesco Metro or something on the way home feels like a great idea.
Yeah.
So the cut-off point doesn't really come.
Yeah.
If anything, the weekends are quieter for me. Because
Okay.
I think in London that sometimes is the case.
Yeah, it is
you know,
the
if
case.
you're doing all your socialising
Yeah.
after work, the weekends are sometimes... So I look back and I used to think to myself, I used to say to people, oh, I'm just a heavy social drinker. But I think even that was glossing over it, because I was socialising pretty much every weekday.
Yeah.
I was always the one going, oh, just one more, let's go on to another bar or whatever. And then as time crept on, I guess it wasn't true that I was just drinking socially anymore, because I was picking that bottle up on the way home.
Yeah.
And having a little private party. One more before bed was like one more bottle.
Yeah.
As opposed to like
Yeah.
one more glass.
Yeah.
And that was life for quite a long time.
And so when you were in that life, so you must have been sort of in your was that in your 30s then?
Yeah, so from my late 20s through to my I went on my first maternity leave from the industry when I was 36.
So did that, because we always say, and this sounds really bad, but we always say when we were drinking, we'd be like, oh, I can't wait to get pregnant, so I'll definitely stop.
Yeah, yeah.
Was that like a first proper break?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually talking about this to someone the other day, and it was almost a sense of relief.
Yes.
Wasn't it? It's like,
Because you
oh,
know
Yeah.
you're not going to be that person. Yeah.
And I yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
I genuinely, I can remember thinking, this is what I need
Yeah.
to stop drinking at the rate that I was drinking. And I genuinely believed when I remember walking out of the agency, standing at the top of the steps in sort of Golden Square and thinking, you know, I'm gonna have a baby, for God's sake, you know.
Yeah.
I'm having a bloody baby. I'm gonna be responsible. I'm gonna leave this drinking world behind me, and that sort of slightly very self-indulgent lifestyle as well. Very,
Yeah.
you know, egocentric sort of lifestyle. I'm gonna be a mum. I'm gonna, you know, go off to where I was living in Ealing at the time. I'm gonna sort of settle down, have my family. Everything's gonna be different. And I honestly believe that was going to be the case. I hadn't drunk for the 9 months of my pregnancy. And that set me off thinking, well, I've got this.
Yeah.
I've got this. I can do this. And I didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, within about 4 months of my first daughter being born, I was back drinking the levels that I had been before.
Really?
And do you think that's partly due to, I don't know if this still exists, but I know when Sharon and I were mums, or we're still mums, but when the kids were young,
Yeah.
there was very much this culture of like, you know, wine o'clock and, you know, mums pretending to have wine in a teacup and a tea
gin
bag,
o'clock. Ooh.
you know, all of that.
Yeah.
And it was also, I remember, because at the time, I gave up when Florence was quite young, and I do remember feeling embarrassed telling other mums I don't drink, or when you'd go out for
Especially
a
when it
social
was the
evening.
mums and it wasn't like people that knew you.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
people that know you love you anyway. But, you know, you'd go out with them and you'd have to say, I don't drink.
Yeah.
And I remember that feeling of like...
Well, you then weren't really invited out that much after
No.
that, because you weren't part of the club. You weren't, genuinely.
No.
Yeah, and it was like gin was a reward, and if you did a school trip afterwards, well, we'll have a bottle of
Yeah.
wine afterwards. Was that the culture, and was that why you got sucked back in?
It was the culture. That is definitely a thing, and that kind of mummy wine culture is so pervasive, and it's very persuasive. It gives you an awful lot of permission to drink, and there's no doubt about the strength and the lure and the pull of that. I just got sucked back into drinking because it was the only way I knew how to manage my emotions, you know. So I look back now with a great level of sort of thinking to myself, you know, God, you're naive. You're just about to you know, embark on the most emotional period of your life, having kids, away from everything which you love, which was work and my group of friends at work. And you think somehow you're going to be different. Because, of course, everything up until the point when I went off on my maternity leave, everything I'd ever done to manage my emotions had been to use alcohol. So here I was on the cusp of the most emotional roller coaster of my life, thinking I was suddenly going to somehow have a different toolkit.
Yeah.
And I didn't. So I had great intentions.
Yeah.
And I really wanted things to be different. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I wasn't sitting there at the time thinking, this is how Anna manages her emotions. It's only in hindsight now that I look back and go, but that is exactly what I used to do. I used to drink to have fun. I used to drink to bond. I used to drink to commiserate, to celebrate, to feel high, to take myself down. I used to drink when I was stressed. And of course, what on earth is early motherhood?
Yeah.
If it isn't a whole massive tsunami of stress, anxiety, uncertainty, self-doubt, all that sort of stuff. And I had slowly but very surely allowed alcohol to become my only tool.
So when you say that, what did that look like? Did that look like, so when the kids were in bed, you'd open the bottle of wine?
Yeah.
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 And then would that be like a whole bottle of wine or a whole bottle? Okay.
And I'd like to say it was when they were in bed. It was earlier than that.
Yeah.
So it started off, when the kids were in bed.
Yeah.
Then it would be, evening.
Yeah, sort of 5, 6,
and then I'd be thinking...
Tea time 4.
Tea time,
Yeah.
It's practically evening. 4
Yeah,
o'clock.
yeah.
Then I would be thinking to myself, no, don't do this. You can't be drinking a bottle of wine in the house on your own when you're the only responsible adult. I'll have to wait till Kieran comes home. But then I'd be like, but he's left. He'll be home soon.
Yeah.
He'll be home. So then I'd be thinking, he's going to... And then next just came earlier and earlier. And then I would have been that one suggesting instead of, baby yoga and cake, I'll be like saying, let's go baby yoga and a wine bar.
Yeah.
And it just crept and it crept and it crept.
And did you find other mother drinkers quite quickly?
You always do.
Yeah.
You always do.
Yeah, you do.
I think it's that whole idea, isn't it, of like birds of a feather. You flock together, you can spot them.
Yeah.
You can, you know who your people can be.
Yeah.
And I suppose out of my NCT, it's a sort of very middle classy thing, isn't it? My NCT group of 6 or 7, there were 2 or 3 of us.
Yeah.
Who were very happy and obliging to sort of meet up and have a drink.
I mean, it was different for us because, for me, essentially I was sick when I had my son.
Yeah.
So, and I do remember having a couple of large glasses of wine, and I had a moment where I went out for a curry. I think Carter must have been with his dad that weekend. So my Carter must have been about a year. I don't think I'd given up then. I remember having 2 large glasses of red wine. And then obviously I was quite sick as well. I was on drugs. The doctors told me I could drink. And I remember waking up the next day and feeling horrific on these 2 glasses of wine, like obviously because you've got sleepless, it's a build up, isn't it? And I remember I went for a walk and I sat down and I was like, I cannot do this. I cannot be sick and drink like this. I feel horrendous. And it was a like, oh my God, I've got to stop doing this. And it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't that night that I stopped completely, but sure. I didn't drink that much in that first year or 2 of Carter because I just couldn't, because I just felt so awful and you're so tired. So I can imagine that anxiety, drinking quite a lot and having small kids. I mean, that must have been horrendous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, my mental health suffered for sure. When the girls were still quite young, or when my eldest was still quite young, I remember feeling emotionally like all over the place.
Yeah.
All over the place. And, then a couple of years later I was, on antidepressants, and I think looking back in my heart of heart, I knew, why the pendulum was swinging so much, and emotionally why I was so up and down. I knew.
You knew it was drink, yeah.
But you lied to the doctor, clearly, and to yourself, of course. And I certainly didn't understand that I didn't understand the full extent to which the drinking was driving the anxiety.
But there's not enough messaging out there saying that either. It's not totally
little.
your fault, is it?
No.
Really? Because there's no great big posters going, drinking equals depression, or drink. There's nothing.
No.
And that's why you're in the dark on your own.
100%. And that's, I coach now and I work with people who, feel such sort of shame and elements of sort of stupidity or even ignorance around these things. And they say, I just can't believe I got myself into this pickle, blah, blah, blah. And there's nothing. Yeah. There's nothing out there guiding us. No one has our back in that respect. not the industry I used to work for,
Yeah.
not the government,
Yeah.
you know, not the big drinks businesses. There's no incentive for any of those big authorities to do anything other than sell alcohol.
Yeah.
So I always just say to people, you know, it's not your fault.
Yeah.
It really isn't. You know, you're human, you have emotions, you found a tool
Yeah.
that helped you switch from these negative feelings to a more positive feeling, albeit in ways that you didn't know rolled on in such that they do.
Yeah.
It's not your fault.
Yeah. Because essentially it's a sedative, isn't it?
Well, it's a funny one.
Yeah.
It is both.
Is it?
Both a stimulant
And a sedative,
So
yeah.
the reason why we drink, and I'm going to make sweeping comments because I generally can, knowing full,
Yeah.
that if alcohol didn't take you up
Yeah.
for that first 20 to 30 minutes, we wouldn't drink.
Okay.
That's why we drink.
Because you have that hit.
You have that hit.
Yeah.
We drink to change the way we feel.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's normally, we're not conscious about it at the time. We're not thinking, ooh, I'm in the right mardy.
Yeah.
You know, I want to have a drink, or I'm feeling a bit disconnected today. I want to have a drink. You just think, oh, I could get a drink.
Yeah.
And we're doing it because it's going to make us feel better,
Yeah.
inverted commas, for 20 to 30 minutes. But that's it.
And then
That's
it's
the
a sedative.
stimulant. And then it starts to
Yeah.
bring you down. And because the body doesn't like alcohol, it's a toxin to the body, it actually purges it as quickly as it can, metabolizes it, purges it, and you start to come down. And it's that point when you start to come down, you think, oh, I'll have another.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you want to go back up. And all of this is going on very subconsciously. But you've gone up, that's nice, says the brain. You start to come down, not so nice, says the brain. I'll have another, says the brain.
And does it bring you back up, the second
But
one?
never as
Not the
as
same
far.
hit.
First one.
Never as far. So if anyone sort of listening to this wants to sort of just test that out for themselves,
Yeah.
the first one, always the best. The second one can have its benefits and merits. Beyond that, you're into the kind of law of diminishing
Yeah,
returns, really.
yeah.
You're chasing. You're just
Yeah.
chasing.
You're
Yeah.
chasing a high. And, you know, that's clearly problematic. Because if every time you have an emotion or a feeling that you don't want, and you think, well, I don't know how I can get rid of that, I can feel better if I have a drink, then you can suddenly find yourself in a situation where if you're doing that every time you feel stressed, but you feel stressed every day,
Yeah.
you find yourself in that situation. But none of that gets explained. None of that gets explained.
But it also becomes addictive.
It is in itself addictive,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because it's like a massive sugar rush. Because I know when I gave up, I was addicted to chocolate.
Yes.
Because I needed that stimulant
Yeah, so it's
something.
Exactly. It's along with, you know, when the alcohol enters your system, it does a couple of things. First of all, it's very, very sugary, so that gives you
Yeah.
a high. But secondly, it gives you a dopamine spike at a level which very few other things in normal life do.
Yeah.
And boy, does that feel good.
Yeah.
So, you know, oftentimes when we become dependent on alcohol, we cease to believe that a nice meal or a good book or anything like that is anything like a good replacement because we've felt something better.
Yeah.
But if you can get that out of your life again,
Yeah.
if you can, then all those other things which
Yeah.
are naturally dopamine inducing become
Yeah.
really nice.
And that's so nice, isn't
it's
it?
really lovely.
Yeah.
And that's why sometimes people walk around going, "Oh, I see beauty in all the small things again."
Yeah.
It's actually what you've done is you've taken the artificial bar.
Yeah.
You've taken the artificial bar out of the equation, and you're just allowing the body to behave as it should with natural dopamine.
So
Yeah.
you're sort of regulating your dopamine
Yeah.
system.
Because we always said that when we gave up drink, I just replaced that real excitement of having a drink to a real excitement of having a meal.
Yes.
And so-
it's a really good way of doing it.
Yeah, and I'd be like, oh no, because I knew as well when we were struggling, like sometimes we used to do like a month of alcohol, like in January or something, and I used to sometimes really struggle. But I knew I mean, it's much easier now when you just give up. But when we used to do these month things, I knew once I got through the first 10 minutes, I used to have intense cravings
Yes.
when I was regularly drinking. That first 10 minutes of like, especially in a Thai restaurant, like Thai with red wine, I'd be like, like the craving was so big. But as soon as I started eating, the craving went.
Yes.
Because I was getting another dopamine hit
Yep.
from something else.
That's it.
So-
That is it.
What was the turning point? So what was the point where you go that
Or you realised you were drinking too much.
yeah,
and then
you decided to change?
Well, I think truth be told, I knew throughout my sort of mid-30s to early 40s that I was, out of control with it, or that it was in control. I mean, I wasn't waking up in skips and things
Yeah.
like that, but I was definitely hooked. I got to a point about 5 years ago when I actually ended up giving up, that I was just exhausted and I could not carry on. So, but I think about 10 years before that, a good 8-10 years before that, I just pushed on because I didn't know what to do about it.
Okay.
And I didn't want to face it, and I didn't want to admit it, and I didn't want to confront it, for all the reasons which, people commonly feel. Labels and fear of what that means, and your social standing, and your friendship groups, and all of that. And of course, if you have been drinking for what you perceive to be more fun, more buzz, more excitement, more joy, then the idea of a life without alcohol feels like a world of less.
Yeah. Feels like my life's not going to be as good without
Legit.
alcohol. Yeah.
It's going to be awful. And I'm my friends aren't going to like me anymore, and I'm not going to enjoy the things I used to enjoy, and who the hell goes to a concert and doesn't drink, and all that sort of stuff. It's like, there's all these reasons. And I kept kicking the can down the road for years and years and years based on not wanting that type of life for me. But mainly because I was very, very scared. And, I just preferred to put my head in the sand for another year or so. But then it did get to a point, and it was beginning to impact my relationship with my husband, because I started to drink really secretively. So when I think, it became obvious to Kieran that I was drinking more than I was saying I was drinking, and, that I had, I was sort of, 2/3 of a bottle down by the time he got home from work type thing. And he would ask me about it, and I would lie.
Yeah.
I just did. And
why would he ask you about it? Would he say,
I think he'd have said, I can tell.
have you been drinking? Right.
Yeah.
You're just all merry.
Yeah.
Hi, you're home. It's pretty obvious. Yeah.
Or he would very innocently open a bottle of wine, and one glass in, I'd be absolutely plastered. And it was obvious that doesn't happen to most people.
This isn't your first, is it?
This isn't your first, is it?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a lot. So it was becoming more obvious. He wouldn't say he confronted me. It wasn't like some form of intervention, but he would say to me, "Have you're all right? Have you been drinking?" I'd be, "No, don't be silly." And then after fashion, I think, that's awful, because you're lying in a marriage, and you might think, well, it's only about the alcohol. It's not like I'm having an affair or anything like that. But it's still, you're on different paths at this point. You're learning secrecy. You're drifting apart. You're not trusting each other. Not talking about stuff that you should be more vulnerable about, I guess. And in the end, I just, that was beginning to show. And I also thought to myself, well, if he's going to judge me, then I'll just do it privately, secretively. So that kind of drives you underground.
Yeah.
And that's just not cool. I mean, that just...
And so what did the secret, like, how did you drink in secrecy? What did you do?
Well, I mean, it was easy to drink before he got home.
Yeah.
It was easy if we were getting ready to go out for him whilst he was in the shower, for me to have, a glass of wine from a bottle that he didn't know was in the house.
Okay.
It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You'd have your own stash.
And had you gone back to work?
I did go back to work, yeah. I went back to work after both of my children, actually. So, and I was working 4 days a week.
Okay.
Back in the advertising industry again.
So was that culture coming back again as well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit. but the awful thing is, I was really good at my job, and I know that sounds really big-headed, but
No, it doesn't.
This isn't about. I mean, I was, and it was very much sort of part of my identity
Yeah.
as well. And then I was just, as time goes on, one of the worst sort of effects of being a drinker such as I was, it has on you is you just don't trust yourself anymore. You don't just, well, because you go through this kind of like, oh, you've got to get a grip.
Yeah.
Get a grip. What are you doing? Enough. Okay, well, it's so-and-so's birthday on Saturday. Monday I start.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
After Christmas. No, you don't.
Yeah.
Well, I won't go over the top this weekend. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
And you just begin to sort of lose that sense of I can count on me.
Yeah.
And that begins to kind of permeate through every aspect of my life. So I began to feel like, I was literally, because I was hiding aspects of my life so much, I just got into the sense I'm going to be found out.
Yeah.
And that went into work, with the sense of, I felt I was just about keeping it together, feeling crap every morning, exhausted and tired, and thinking about, well, so I'll go home and have a drink this evening, it'll be all right. But that's just exhausting.
Yeah.
And it was all just beginning to sort of feel like it was imploding, really. And I had to do something about it.
And so what did that moment look like?
Well, I did have a moment, a bit of a pivot moment one afternoon when we were at the house, and I had genuinely thought that I was kind of not much was going to be asked of me that afternoon. I had been cooking at lunchtime. I used to drink when I was cooking. So I had been cooking for a couple of hours, doing batch cooking and stuff, and plans changed in the afternoon. My girls weren't going out. Kieran wasn't taking them out, and everyone was suddenly in, and a board game was suggested. And as we sort of sat down and began to play this board game, I think it was a bit obvious how drunk I was. And one of the things that, was a real turning point for me was, I remember my eldest daughter asking her dad why Mummy was behaving strangely and talking funny, which was a bit of a low point.
Yeah.
And how old was she when she asked that question?
I would say about 10.
Yeah.
I was kind of not marched upstairs, but Kieran suggested quite strongly that we go upstairs, that I lie down. We sat on the bed and had a chat, and he basically, without using ultimatums or anything like that, he said to me, we can't go on like this.
Yeah.
It's awful when you see someone cry as well.
Yeah.
And he was very upset, and I just thought, Christ. And I remember thinking to myself, this is, for fuck's sake, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I think I gave myself that evening the strongest talking to that I had to date, to that point. And I just resolved as well that I just knew that, if I played my life forward, I knew what I stood to lose.
Yeah.
And that it was probably nearer than I had possibly anticipated, given those kind of conversations with Kieran, because I was going to lose trust and love and respect from him, but I was also, the girls were clearly at an age now where they weren't being fooled by anything.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get away with it, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to be that person in their lives, but I didn't want to be outside their life either. I had to do something about it.
Yeah.
So that afternoon was really pivotal. Not suggesting you can just flick a switch though, that's not how it works, but I started with greater resolve to kind of try and work out what my way through it was going to be.
But it's interesting how powerful alcohol is and the level of denial.
Yeah.
For all those years, I'm sure there are other incidences.
Yeah.
But it really takes something that you're emotionally connected to, that you kind of go, I mean, you could have ignored that, but for some reason...
And some people do.
And some people do.
Yeah, they do.
But I always think it's just so remarkable how powerful the denial can be with alcohol and how long it can go on for until you actually face it and do something about it.
It is. It's incredibly powerful. And, rock bottoms look very different for lots of people. And I always say, I didn't really have a rock bottom. You know, there was no accident, no tragedy, no loss of house, job, finance, nothing like that. But there was just a slow kind of gnawing sort of depletion of sense of self-worth, self-esteem, self-trust. Everything was just, you know, my light was going out so much. And it just, I had a real kind of get a grippage kind of moment. Thank God I did. And a really good friend of mine, you know, who's had their own alcohol challenges, said to me at the time, it's, you know, it's not like you've hit rock bottom, you're just bouncing along the bottom.
Yeah.
You know, you're just bouncing along, being swept along. But it, you know, it wasn't good enough, you know, in terms of, what was I was in my late 40s, and it just wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough for anyone around me.
So how did you manage to quit? What did you do?
So I was very lucky because I, like a lot of people, had sort of been labouring along for so long in the sense of it's AA or no way, you know. And I was like, I can't do that. I just had this real kind of block about being able to do it. And it's not, you know, I've not got a thing against AA. I really haven't. It's an organisation that's helped millions of people, but it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
I couldn't just bring myself to do it. I couldn't say the word alcoholic.
Yeah.
You know, because I would just I stand in front of the mirror sometimes and go, you know, are you an alcoholic? And I just literally, I couldn't. It was just awful. So, but
Is that because you don't believe you were an alcoholic? Or
you were just a heavy drinker?
I was terrified of it.
Okay, yeah.
And the thing is, Lauretta, as well, that you know, that we have a very black and white view of drinking in this country. Yeah. You're either an alcoholic or you're a normal drinker. You can either handle it or you can't. And, you know, when you think of the term alcoholic, you think of all the very dark places and all the very tragic, you know, and you know, you have associations. And I just thought, I can't be, you know, that, but then battling all the time with what you are. You know, just because you're some kind of middle-class mummy who works in the advertising industry, what do you mean you can't be? You clearly are. No, you got. And then I used to go through this whole like kind of conflict with myself. But what I now know, and what I subsequently have come to understand, is that there's a huge, you know, the reason why that black and white kind of distinction is so dangerous in a way, is it means that a whole sweep of people just fly under the radar. This sort of grey area, middle lane drinker, people who don't identify over here. So with the alcoholic sort of label, so it must mean they're okay.
It must mean they're just a heavy drinker.
Just a heavy drinker. She just likes to drink. She just likes to drink.
Yeah.
So I did, though, Google 3:00 in the morning that evening after I'd had that incident in the daytime with the board game. I Googled, am I an alcoholic? Because I wanted to see what came up. It's just, and actually I've subsequently read it's a very, you know, in terms of terms Googled.
Yeah, it's very search, really high.
Anyway, long story short, a article or some form of social media thing popped up from a business or an organisation called This Naked Mind. And it's an approach to alcohol cessation or alcohol control that was pioneered by a lady called Annie Grace in America and turned into an approach. And the words I mentioned earlier, it is not your fault, were there writ large. And it was the first time that I genuinely sat there and thought, oh my God, there's no... There's this sort of sense of shame.
Yeah.
You know? But it is your responsibility was quickly followed on. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to do something about it. I just suddenly thought, God. And I read the article, I clicked the links, all the things that they obviously intended I do.
Yeah.
And from that day forth, I just started to look more into it. And then I did a guided sort of alcohol break, which was one of the sort of programs that they ran. And then I got into doing, I did like their signature program, which was called The Path. Yeah. And it was a year long. It was very American. And it
does sound very American, but it sounds like you might, you know, truly find yourself.
Yeah, well, it was funny because I have to say, I mean, and obviously people can find this out for themselves, but the content was brilliant. The approach is superb. The method, the style, the tone, whatever, that's quite culturally skewed. But the approach, I was just like, this makes enormous sense to me. And I think, when people are in a place where they have to sort of bow to an authority and seek help, clearly it's got to speak to you. And it's just that method and that language and those words did.
Yeah.
So much so, clearly, that I then went, I want to go on, and that's where my coaching certification has come from as well. So I went back to them and said, I want to do that for other people.
Yeah.
So having gone through that process and left alcohol in the rearview mirror through that approach, I then went back and said, I want to sort of coach it.
So what is the process? Is it too big a subject to...
No, but it's. I mean, I could talk all day about it. It'd be very boring. But I mean, the main principles are that it's not your fault.
Yeah.
So just stop with the shame, the blame, the self-loathing, the recrimination, and most importantly, and this is the one I love more than anything, is stop trying to stop.
Oh, okay.
And start trying to learn.
Yeah.
And I say this to clients all the time, put the weapons down, willpower, and stop trying to drive yourself towards change by measuring yourself by the degree to which you hate yourself or you can't look yourself in the mirror and all those negative things. Understand why you're drinking, really understand why you're drinking. And understand that it's a very human response to a very hectic life.
Yeah.
But what are the triggers for you? What are the ones that are innately in you because you are the way you are? And what are the beliefs that we've had thrown at us by advertising or the drinks industry or whatever? But just understand primarily the roles that with the jobs. We give alcohol jobs to do. So is it because you're lonely? Is it because you're anxious? Is it because you're scared? Is it because you lack confidence? Is it because, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da? Understand it. Don't judge yourself for it then, but just understand it. And then appreciate that you've been using the one tool which alcohol, which society is very happy to sponsor.
Yeah.
So that's not your fault, but you do need better tools. But if you can unwrap all the reasons why you might be drinking and the beliefs you have, and for most of us, at the core of it, there's an element of, I'm not enough in some way.
Yeah.
Not pretty enough or sexy enough or smart enough or good enough mum or whatever it might be. The not enoughness is really powerful. So just understand what it is within you and then appreciate that, as I say, society presents it as an answer. And we start to unpick the beliefs that we have around it. Because there's no point in helping anyone towards sobriety if they're then an unhappy sober person.
Yeah.
You actually need to help affect a mindset shift of I'm not putting that shit in my body anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want it and I don't need it.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start getting out of a place of need, you've got a choice.
Yeah.
You can say, okay, so I feel rubbish today. What's the kindest thing I could do for myself right now?
Yeah.
It's never going to be having a drink.
Yeah.
It never is, because it's not good for you.
Yeah.
But what's, I feel this. What do I need?
A walk, a bath, a nice meal, a phone call.
Cry.
Yeah, or cry.
Just to accept that life shit sometimes.
Yeah.
But know that you can have those feelings, that you don't have to judge yourself for them, that they're all just part of the human condition. And your feelings can't hurt you.
Yeah.
You don't need to change the way you feel. You just have to accept it.
Yeah.
And that for me is kind of resilience, because you just know that you can't be hurt by these things. You can just accept it.
And so it's almost like rewiring your brain.
It is totally rewiring. For years and years and years, we've gone party alcohol.
Yeah.
Sunshine rosé.
Yeah.
Summer pub gardens.
Yeah.
Holidays get smashed.
Congratulations. Glass of champagne.
Celebrate.
Yeah.
Toast champagne.
Yeah.
We've got these pathways in our brain which light up when these moments occur, and we have to break them, and it's unbelievable. I mean, relatively easy when the approach that this Naked Mind, which is, you know, pioneered, is that this process of kind of neuroplasticity is happening all the time when we change our habits, all the time, and it is totally within our grasp to do it. You just have to recognize what connections are being made in the brain and interrupt them. Yeah. Oh, there's that Summer Rose script playing out again. Yeah. Well, okay, it's just a script. You know,
because I mean, I think I might have said to you on your podcast, I know, like, you know, as I said, I used to love red wine, and, you know, I went to Napa Valley with my ex-husband, and I loved the whole ritual, the ceremony of drink as well. This is all triggers and the neuroplasticity. But now if I see someone with a large glass of red wine, I literally see like a headache, anxiety in a glass. So I haven't forced that. That has just happened naturally as you veer away and as you stop. So was any of the path, did any of it have to make you dig deep into the childhood stuff, or was it just that wasn't relevant? It
did. And it's again, this is why I love it, because it's not just a case of thou shalt not drink. It's a case of who are you? Yeah. And that's so important. That's such it's a good thing to know. Yeah. You know, in all walks of life, in all aspects of life, if you know what triggers you and makes you feel negative, and therefore your response used to be have a drink, those triggers are still going to be around you every single day. Your response might therefore be different once you're out of the drinking game. But to know what triggers you, and to know what makes you smile, and to know what makes you sad, and to know a little bit about why you are the way you are, and to, you know, to want to sort of have that level of insight and personal awareness is really cool. I mean, I honestly, I know that it sounds like a sort of like, really? When I gave up drinking and I began to understand myself a lot more, I became a better manager at work. I actually knew what it was to lead instead of manage. That distinction had always sort of slightly passed me by when I was sort of, you know, in the workforce. I said, I got it. I just got it, because it's sort of, I could apply my self-awareness and the higher level of self-compassion I have for myself now towards other people, and see in them what triggered them, or what motivated them, or how they and it just makes you more self-aware, certainly, and I think maybe it sets you up. Yeah. It sets you up. And parenting. Yeah. You know, so, goodness me. Yeah. You know, I parent so differently. So, and I think that is the beauty of, I say, doing the work, instead of just walking into an AA situation and saying, from this day on, you will not drink. The approach that I now take, and with clients, but also that I went through myself, is from this day on, you will be fascinated and curious about why you drink. And you'll want to work out how you do want to feel in life, and you're going to work out what it is that's going to make you feel that way. Yeah. So we're not taking something out. Well, we're taking alcohol out, but we're going to put other stuff back in that really serves you. So you're not going to feel deprived. Yeah. At all. And if you're not feeling deprived, then you can start saying, well, you know, I've got a place, I'm coming at this from a place of choice now. Yeah,
that makes so much sense, and it's really powerful. I wanted to ask, without being too personal, and you don't have to share if you don't want to, I'm just intrigued. So what did it reveal about you and why you drank, or what did you find out?
I found out that I, like most people, had quite a strong sense of not enoughness about me, and my particular sort of self-recrimination was that I was labouring under a sort of a 30-year belief that I just wasn't smart enough. So, you know, by the definitions in the 1980s school, had put on what academically smart was, and, you know, the exam system and things like that. I felt like I wasn't smart enough.
Even though you had this amazing career.
Yeah.
Yeah. And was that embedded from being in the education system?
Yeah, I think I've pinpointed points during my education when I fell short of perhaps parental expectation or school expectation in the way that, smartness was measured in those days. I think it's a bit different now. But I remember just feeling not good enough, like I was never quite achieving what I was supposed to achieve. And what's really interesting about digging into all of that is I wasn't clearly walking around consciously thinking to myself, you don't think you're smart enough, have a drink.
Yeah.
What that thought in my subconscious planted was, well, I have to try harder. So it was that belief that I'm not smart enough fueled a behaviour that was really punishing. I set myself my entire career really punishing high standards. No one else did it for me.
Yeah.
It was me. I wanted to feel smart. And I measured my success by validation from other people.
Yeah.
So I was always chasing it, never feeling it, just chasing. And it kind of created a real over-striving perfectionist, which, as you'll know, it always leads to disappointment and you never quite feel you're there.
Yeah.
And therefore, it wasn't the belief that directly linked to my drinking, it was the behaviours that the belief created.
Yeah.
It's the behaviours that led off the belief that made me feel constantly less than, in comparison to other people, measuring myself against targets and metrics I should never really have practically set myself. So I did have quite a clear sort of sense of insight as to at least one of my kind of key drivers.
Yeah.
But I mean, there have been others. I mean, I also one of the things I have to admit I discovered, and it was such a powerful realization for me, is somewhere along the line I had just fallen into this trap. I don't know when this happened, but I'd fallen into this trap of thinking that we have to be happy all the time.
Right, yeah.
And we don't.
Yeah.
So as soon as anything that didn't feel like happiness and buzz and upbeat and fun came into play, I would like, I don't want that. I don't like that. And I'd have a drink to feel the other way. And that is a really, really dangerous game.
Yeah.
Because because we're not happy all the time. We can't be. We can't be.
Yeah.
And it's not natural to be.
And I think as well that like taking that drink out, I know certainly for me and Lauretta, is that what it gave me was clarity, because what would happen, and I probably said this on your podcast, so sorry if I'm boring, like repeating myself, but what would happen is that when I drank a lot and then when I felt low, I'd be like, it's all right, you've drank last night, you've not slept well, that's why you're low. So then you can sort of outsource your happiness to the hangover constantly. So then when I gave up drink, of course there were days where I wasn't happy, but at least I knew I'm not happy because I'm not happy. I'm not happy because I'm hungover. So it gives you massive clarity to why you are feeling the way you feel.
100%.
But it also makes you happier.
It does definitely make
it does make you
so much happier. And those down days, I mean, in comparison, they're minute. But at least I knew what they were. But and even now, because you forget that we're just energy systems. Even like now, if I have a day when I'm just feeling a bit foggy, I'm just not feeling that great, I haven't jumped out of bed, or I've got slight kind of anxiety, I don't even know what about, that kind of off feeling, I swear to God, we go and do like a 10k run, and afterwards I'm literally on a high. So then you sort of go, if you can manipulate your energies, you change your mood.
Oh my goodness.
There was nothing wrong that morning when I woke up and was just feeling a bit foggy. Actually, I didn't really have any problems. But once I ran and changed my energy system, I felt on a really good mood. I'm like, all right, let's go and get coffee. Should we go out for breakfast?
Yeah. There are loads of things that we can do once we, if we are, able enough to sit and go, okay, what is this feeling? I can label this feeling. And then you can think, well, okay, is it as significant?
Yeah.
And do I need to do something about it? And if I do a 10K run or a phone call or whatever it might be, we as long as we're aware of it. But the thing that I was doing, and this is just the way alcohol works as well, is I was getting these, it was like, I kind of think of emotions as being like internal post, you know, but I was intercepting every single message. I was kind of going, I'll have a drink.
Yeah.
I wasn't actually opening the message and thinking, what am I being told here? Or you're sad, or you're a bit angry, or you're a bit depressed today, or whatever it might be. I was just, don't like that feeling, have a drink. So I was intercepting, and I wasn't therefore in a position of thinking, well, how could I better fulfill this? So, and the other thing to remember is, of course, that when we drink to numb negative feelings, it's not that precision tool. You can't say, oh, alcohol, can you please take away my sadness and anxiety, but keep my joy intact, you know, keep my interest intact, keep my, you know, contentment intact. You just can't. It goes like a sledgehammer. So it dampens all of your emotions. So again, when you take it out of the equation, you know, you feel more. Yes, you feel more of the negative.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
That's what I had to tell myself.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel this way. You can actually treat yourself in a different way, knowing that you're feeling sad today. Don't push yourself.
Yeah.
You're angry, you need to go and calm down.
Yeah.
You know, you need to vent, you need to do whatever. But as, you know, the thing which we've alluded to as well is all your positivity comes back in a greater level of, you know, vivid feeling as well.
Yeah.
Because, you know, alcohol dampens a whole lot.
So I'm just mindful of time.
I just wanted to...
Just 5 minutes,
Yeah, I wanted to talk about... We loosely talked about culture and governments not stepping in. Where are we at with the sober movement, do you think? Is it changing? Do you think the government should be stepping in more to help people?
Well, I think they should.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, I don't know how close we are to that happening, really. Without getting too political about it, I mean, any government that has alcohol duty makes money out of the sale of alcohol. And it makes money today out of the sale of alcohol. You look at the cost of alcohol on society and the health service and policing and all, it's massive. But that's kind of over time and it's kicked down the road. Today, the government makes an awful lot of money out of alcohol, so it doesn't have a huge amount of interest.
But it must have been the same with smoking, mustn't it?
Yeah, so that's a very good point. And what I would love to see happening is for alcohol to eventually go the same way as nicotine, where the realization of its huge public harm is so great it can no longer be ignored.
Yeah.
But at the moment, I think we're so far away from even just awareness.
Yeah.
Now that, for me, is where the government should be doing its work in, you know, I would love to see health warnings on bottles of drink.
Yeah, we were saying the same. Problem is that the half the cabinet, though, love a glass of wine. They've got, but it's in their culture. So where's the motivation?
There isn't.
It's just not there. And with smoking, do you know what I mean? It doesn't alter your mood.
No.
So it's addictive, but it's not mood altering, whereas alcohol is. And so that's why so many people are so dependent.
It's exactly. And I think the thing is that, you know, if somebody's drinking a lot today, that's worth quite a lot of money to the government. The issues that they might have in 10 or 15 years' time,
they're not going to be in government
that's
anymore.
That's a different government's problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the money that they're taking in today, billions through alcohol duty, that's very, very important to them. So they don't have a great incentive to want to tell us to drink less, and obviously slapping pictures of, you know, decaying livers and stuff like that on bottles isn't going to make people
it's not
drink
very
more.
glam, is it?
So there's no great real incentive for them to do it. But what I think is really interesting is the sort of the sober curious movement is beginning to do it from like the grassroots. And people are beginning to go, this isn't good enough. And there's a wonderful industry of people who are creating lovely non-alcoholic drinks to
Yeah.
say, you know what, the big guys aren't interested in doing anything interesting, so we'll craft some really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
And the great thing is that Gen Z are drinking a lot less.
Yeah.
Because they actually do have a greater sense of awareness between the links of mental health and they haven't got those deeply ingrained neural pathways.
Yeah.
The
That
biggest,
what
the
we
biggest
had
drink-
growing
the
up
biggest
is
drinkers
us.
in this country
Yeah.
is us.
Yeah.
And also mobile phones. Apparently, they don't want to get caught on camera.
Exactly. So it's funny, isn't it? Because technology. I mean, I think back now, and I think, goodness me, thank God,
Thank God.
thank God, they didn't have phones with cameras on when I was tripping around Soho.
Weren't you saying that it's been the biggest change in behaviour that has not been government led?
It's without government. It's the biggest change in behaviour without government
any government
intervention.
So that's really exciting.
It is exciting,
It
and
is.
it's because the Gen Z they care about how they look, how they feel. And we've got the internet, and everyone
There's
can
movements,
see that it's a carcinogen.
I just wanted to finish off with, because we've already come to an hour, which has gone so quickly. And it's been a really amazing conversation, and I relate so much to what you're saying and what you've been through. What I think about, and what would be really nice for our listeners, is that there's got to be a lot of people out there that are currently in the position that you were in, that board game moment where you're like, I've got to do something different. What would your message be to anyone in that type of position, going, I know I want to change, but I don't know how,
and I'm scared?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things, I suppose. I would say, if you're even if you're just worried, if you think that alcohol is running away with you, then it probably is, because it's and it rapidly becomes a problem, because if it's even preying on your mind, then the chances are that you're possibly drinking a little bit more than you want to, or you're slightly out of alignment with who you want to be, behaving in ways you didn't plan. I would literally say, do your research in terms of all the options of help, because it isn't AA or no way anymore. And one of the wonderful things that's happened over the last sort of 5 or 6 years is the amount of coaches, yes, but also other organisations, other approaches, podcasts, my podcast, but others too, books. There's a whole load of material out there now that never existed before, where people can dive in. But I do think, from someone who kicked the can down the road for years and years and years and years and years, I really wish I hadn't. I really wish I hadn't. I had my head in the sand for about 10 or 15 years, and I wish I'd started to do the work earlier. Because if you have, if you've got to the ripe old age of 40-something, 50, whatever it might be, and all you've ever been is a drinker, you just have to accept that you do not know what it is like not to drink, and therefore every assumption you have is probably wrong. So, I would say, yes, there's a shame barrier, of course there is, but the right kind of help, coaching is great, because there is no shame. I mean, since me, like I've been in the gutter, I couldn't stand in judgment of anybody, but it's about gently nudging people towards the choices that are right for them, as opposed to having a blanket approach, and just start. Start.
And also as well, I mean, that really resonated as well, what you just said of like, you don't know what it's like not to drink, and I'm sure you feel the same, but not drinking is possibly the greatest thing you can do. Like, life is so joyful, and we gave up when we were 40, and we always say, I wish we did this earlier.
If I did it at
30. And so it's because I think what stops people from not giving up is, my life is going to be shit without it.
Fear.
But your life is going to be so much better in every level. Yes, you will have shit days, but your life is so much better.
But I also think it ties back to the education piece, and the bit that you talked about with the path is, knowing how will it be better and what you have to do to replace the drink and understanding why you're drinking and all of that is essential.
It's absolutely essential. And the very last thing I would say is I couldn't emphasize this enough, because I know, as you both do, about, you know, how taking alcohol out of the equation can suddenly open up life in different ways. I would say that, you know, we often ask the wrong question, which is like, you know, is my drinking so bad that I have to stop? And that scares people.
Yeah.
The better question is my life good enough?
Yeah.
Because the chances are, if you're thinking you might be drinking too much, that it's impacting you, whether it's your energy or your sleep or your mental health or your finances or your ambitions or your, you know, energy, whatever, your parenting, your relationships. If alcohol is compromising your life in any shape or form, then that is a problem.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
It's
I need
problem.
AA. It's just a problem.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't.
Yeah.
It shouldn't. And life can be so much better. So for some people, it's just about the difference between going from good to great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From some people, they need to pick themselves up from a slightly lower place.
Yeah.
But it's all possible. And you just got to not be scared, be excited by our possibilities.
Yeah. And tell our listeners how they can reach out to you and if they wanted to work with you.
Well, the obvious, my podcast is The Big Drink Rethink.
Yeah.
And that's on all platforms. I'd love it if you listened to that. That'd be great.
I forgot to tell you, you know, we had a guest book our retreat based on our episode.
I know.
Did you know that?
Well, I think,
did you email?
Yeah. I love
so
that.
lovely. She loved your podcast, and she was like, I love the podcast, I love the episode. And I thought, I've got to come and do a weekend. And she was just on the beginning of her journey.
Amazing.
Like 4 months. I think she was a GP, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
And she was about to go on holiday, and she was like, I really want to get through the holiday without drink. And we gave her loads of support about don't drink on holiday. She did it, and she said she just had the best holiday ever. She said she saw sunrises, she did yoga. But that's all spiral from listening to your podcast. So just to share with you, like, how powerful it is.
That's very kind of you. I get lots of feedback, actually, because when people, you know, and I love those emails and stuff.
Yeah.
People say, I'm on day 74.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have ever started if.
Yeah.
So that's one way. So the Big Drink Rethink. And then the other thing is I do coaching.
Yeah.
And I go under, my website is thebeliefscoach.com, the beliefs coach, because it's all about the beliefs. It's all about the beliefs we have around alcohol and ourselves.
And can I also say, you've got a book coming out. We're not going to talk too much about it, but we'll get you back on when it comes out. But
That
it's
would be
very
amazing.
exciting, isn't it?
It is that central sort of theme of, you know, we don't need to be waiting until life is bad. You know, we can be asking if life can be better. So it's all the podcast talks about, plus more.
Brilliant.
Watch this space.
Yeah, we'll have you back.
Yeah, thank you so
thank
much,
you.
Anna.
No,
Thank you so much. That was fab. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Gavin Sisters Wellness Show. Please don't forget to subscribe, review us, tell your friends, share the episode if you think someone else would like it.
You're sounding really needy.
No, I know. It's great for the algorithms and stuff, isn't it?
No, do like, share, subscribe, do all of that. It really, really helps us. I'm starting to sound like the Diary of the CEO. I've been looking at my analytics and nobody's subscribing. But no, yes, please do.
Thank you.